In our first conversation with Norman Adami on Nyumbu Game Farm.
My father was an avid nature lover, wildlife lover, and he instilled in us a deep appreciation for nature and the wildlife. And we grew up in Kroonstad in the Free State. I went to junior school there until I was 9 years old, and then I went to boarding school in Kimberley. I then went to the army. I was conscripted in the army. I joined the infantry, did my basic training. I'd been awarded an American field scholarship, so I was able to interrupt my army training to go to America. I then went on to university in Cape Town, did a business science degree, then did an MBA. And then from there, my very first job actually was with SAB. And the closest farm that I could find that was suitable with the right habitat, with the right environment was Wildebeestfontein, which is Nyumbu today. And I guess the next phase was when we acquired Tyson, or when I acquired Tyson at Nyumbu. And that moved us into the next phase of our farming endeavors.
Still on Nyumbu, we hear about the farm's beginning stages and challenges they had to face.
In the early days at Nyumbu, it wasn't that easy to acquire these rare species. Never mind special, magnificent specimens of these species. And there were no game traders to talk about. There were very few full-time wildlife vets, one or two that were around. And so it was a matter of personal contact and making personal contact with those few individuals that were doing game ranching across the country. And so it was a matter of making phone calls. There were very few buffalo available, for example. There were, at that time, there were no Kruger projects. They hadn't been approved yet. And so the only buffalo that possibly one could acquire were from Addo, and then there were the imported East African buffalo. And that's the source of where I went to, was primarily the East African buffalo. And in those early years, I'd phoned game ranchers like Tillman Luden, who helped me with 5 heifers. He reluctantly helped me, but he did me a big favor. I scoured around. I also contacted Bill Fenter at that point in the early years. He had buffalo that were imported from the London Zoo. I looked around the country and found other buffalo that slowly added to the genetic pool and the wide diversity of genetics that I was looking for. And that was in the early phase. And I'll tell you more about the next phase later. But subsequently, I've continued to invest in buffalo genetics to this day. And I always believe one can add value to one's herd. Despite the fact that, I've got a number of buffalo with a wide genetic diversity, I continue to look for magnificent specimens. And it was in 2008, early 2008, I think I was one of the very first game ranchers to actually undertake a study of genetic diversity and DNA analysis of my buffalo. And at that time, Ben Greiling of ARC undertook a study. We looked at the genetic diversity of the Nyumbu herds versus the Kruger Park herds. And at that time, even with that relatively small population of buffalo that we'd put in on the sample for the study, Nyumbu's buffalo were marginally ahead of the Kruger Parks in terms of genetic diversity. And that also, I think, inspired me to continue and carry on in investing in more specimens and in more buffalo. And obviously that same approach was adopted with sable. We started with a Matetsi sable. In the mid-90s, as I mentioned, I had imported some Matetsi sables from Zimbabwe because, again, there were very few locally available. And as time went by, we started to acquire Zambian bulls and then starting to breed crosses. And later in the next phase, started to acquire Zambian sables. And then there was also the roan. And I was fortunate as well to get some magnificent genetics of roans from the early years. Again, very scarce. Those animals were very scarce. You could buy 2 or 3 at any one time. And they were even pricey in the early 90s. I mean, a roan cost 200,000 Rand in 93, 94. And I was able to secure 4 of those from Sable Ranch. And I was also able to secure 5 or 6 females from Howard Knott at that time. And that was the nucleus of the herd that has produced very well for me today. And I've added to that, and I've added in different bulls from various sources over time. And that's added to the genetic diversity of the animals that I have in the roan herds. And then, of course, there was kudu. I was always very fond of kudu. They were attractive to me. I could never go to an auction and walk past a big kudu bull. And they used to roam freely on the big farm, on the main farm area, not in the breeding camps. And I'd acquired many different bulls, big bulls, over time. And I'd bred up quite a good diversity of genetics in amongst the kudu herds as well. And then over time started to acquire even bigger bulls. And today we have 5 big bulls over 60 inches. They're all in breeding camps with different genetics and breeding very well. And then the Nyalas also adopted a similar approach with those, and the same with Golden Wildebeest. I was a bit of a late starter when it came to color variants, and the Black Impala and the Saddleback Impala, and then obviously the Bushbuck as well. And then Livingston Eland was probably another interesting development. And again, a similar approach was adopted there, trying to acquire the magnificent specimens, proven male lines and proven female lines with all the characteristics and features that the market identifies with, and breed for excellence.
Next time, when we continue our conversation with Norman.
There was a major shift in the industry in 2008, and the attractiveness of the industry, the economics of the industry just made a major shift. I applied the basic approach that I had learned so much in my business career. And so it was all about getting clear on the strategy. Number 3, that accountability is clear and personal for everybody. Number 4, that we deeply value and respect our customers. Number 5, that our reputation is indivisible. And I've got a simple philosophy that I've also applied in business, and it's an acronym. It means SAB, or the acronym is SAB. It stands for Simple, Action, Bold. Breeding bull that we had, and the bull that's proven to take us to another level as Nyumbu was a bull called Tyson, whom I acquired from Vian van der Linde with a handshake.